If you read part 1, you saw the 118-year pattern. You saw what Iraq is building. You saw the 17-year veto that just ended. Now I'm going to show you what was blocking all of it, and why it had to be destroyed before any financial system or currency reform could move forward. This is the part most people skip. The bank fines, the sanctions networks, the cartel connections, the protection layers. It's also the part that makes everything else make sense. You cannot understand why Iraq's currency reform took this long without understanding the machine that blocked it. That machine has a name: Iran's Sanctions Evasion Network. The receipts are sitting in U.S. Department of Justice court filings. Here's what Western banks paid in fines for processing Iranian money they knew was sanctioned. BNP Paribas, France. $8.9 billion in 2014. Pled guilty to criminal charges. Hid thousands of transactions with Iran, Sudan, and Cuba by stripping identifying information from wire transfers. 5 years probation. A compliance monitor. Biggest fine in banking history. HSBC, UK. $1.9 billion in 2012. Drug money plus sanctions violations covering Iran, Libya, Sudan, Myanmar. 25,000 transactions over 7 years without flagging the Iran connection. Nobody went to prison. Standard Chartered, UK. $1.6 billion across 2012 and 2019. Caught hiding Iranian identities in dollar clearing. Fined again 7 years later for doing it again. Repeat offender, still in business. Commerce Bank, Germany. $1.45 billion. UniCredit, Italy. $1.3 billion. ING, Netherlands. $619 million. Credit Suisse, $536 million. ABN AMRO, $500 million. Lloyds, $350 million. Barclays, $298 million. Deutsche Bank, $258 million. All of them used the same technique. Strip the identifying information from wire transfers to sneak Iranian money through the US dollar system. These aren't allegations. These are guilty pleas, deferred prosecution agreements, and forfeiture orders. On the public record, $17.7 billion in fines. And that's just what they got caught doing. BNP Paribas alone paid more than the next 4 banks combined. Then there's Halkbank, Turkey's state-owned bank. An Iranian-Turkish businessman named Reza Zarrab was arrested at Miami Airport in 2016. He'd masterminded a scheme to launder billions of Iranian oil revenue through Halkbank using fake food shipment. Turkey's gold exports to Iran went from $55 million in 2011 to $6.5 billion in 2012. U.S. prosecutors argued Halkbank secretly transferred $20 billion in restricted funds. In March 2026, DOJ gave Halkbank a deferred prosecution agreement. Compliance monitor. Nobody goes to prison. Again. This is the infrastructure that kept Iraq's currency suppressed. Not incompetence. Not instability. A $17.7 billion web of Western banks actively processing the money that funded the political machine blocking Iraq's reforms. Iran didn't just evade sanctions through European banks, it built an entire shadow financial system. FinCEN, the U.S. Treasury's financial intelligence unit, identified $9 billion of potential Iranian shadow banking flowing through U.S. accounts in 2024 alone. $5 billion through shell companies with no verifiable business activity. Another $4 billion through front companies in the UAE and Singapore. 3 to 10 intermediary hops to obscure the origin. Iran's crypto ecosystem reached $7.78 billion in 2025. Over $3 billion linked to IRGC networks, militia financing, oil trade, dual-use equipment. The Central Bank of Iran acquired at least $507 million in USDT stablecoin. Iran legalized crypto mining in 2019 and used subsidized electricity to mine Bitcoin for the central bank. And all of that is before you get to Iraq. 34 of 44 private banks in Iraq were under sanctions, more than 24 involved in funneling dollars to Iran. Al-Huda Bank, controlled by the IRGC since its establishment, used forged documents to execute at least $6 billion in wire transfers out of Iraq. FinCEN designated it a primary money laundering concern. Regional analysts estimate Iraq facilitated $300 million of Iranian capital per day. That's $109 billion a year. Running through the same banking system that was supposed to be modernizing Iraq's economy. This is why Iraq couldn't reform its currency, not because the CBI wasn't ready, not because the infrastructure wasn't built, because the biggest laundry operation in the Middle East was running through Iraq's banking system, funded by Iran, protected by Maliki's parliamentary blocs, and processed knowingly by some of the largest banks in Europe. Every system I've described was maintained by a protection network. People in positions of institutional power whose job was to ensure the architecture stayed in place. That protection is being withdrawn, on all fronts, simultaneously. And the scale of what's happening right now has no precedent in modern military or geopolitical history. 7 protection networks, all dismantled within 14 months. This is not coincidence. The cartels. In 13 months, January 2025 to February 2026, the United States designated 8 criminal organizations as foreign terrorist organizations. Then it systematically dismantled them. El Mencho, head of CJNG, the most wanted man in Mexico, killed February 22, 2026. U.S. intelligence provided the targeting package. El Mayo Zambada, co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel, captured July 25, 2024, after one of the most dramatic betrayals in cartel history, pled guilty in Brooklyn. The betrayal triggered a civil war inside the cartel. It tore itself apart. Maduro, captured January 3, 2026 in Operation Absolute Resolve. Delta Force breached his residence, indicted for narco-terrorism. The numbers in 13 months. 1,271 MS-13 arrested. 260-plus Tren de Aragua indicted. 617 Sinaloa arrests in a single 5-day operation. 480 kilograms of fentanyl powder. 714,707 counterfeit pills. Overdose deaths fell 25%. Youth deaths down 40%. Cuba. This week, March 13, 2026, President Diaz-Canel publicly confirmed that Cuban officials have been holding talks with the Trump administration. After 60-plus years of defiance, the regime is at the negotiating table. They released 51 prisoners as a goodwill gesture. The U.S. fuel blockade, threatening tariffs on any country supplying Cuba with oil, is starving the island's energy grid. Experts warned of 0-hour, total fuel depletion, if no shipments arrived in March. Cuba isn't surrendering, but a regime that has resisted every U.S. president since Eisenhower is now negotiating under economic pressure alone. Iran, February 28, 2026. Joint U.S.-Israeli strikes killed Supreme Leader Khamenei. Also killed his daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, and daughter-in-law. Mojtaba Khamenei elected replacement, March 8. And Hezbollah, already decimated through 2024-2025 with approximately 25 commanders killed, reportedly ordered 400 commanders to leave Lebanon for South America. The network isn't dead. It's relocating to its Latin American nodes, the same nodes that are also being dismantled. Step back and look at the map. In the space of 14 months, the Venezuelan dictator captured, the most wanted cartel leader in Mexico killed, the Sinaloa cartel fractured from within, Cuba at the negotiating table for the first time in 6 decades, Iran's supreme leader killed, Hezbollah's command structure gutted, Epstein's protection network exposed across 4 countries. Institutional fraud surfaced inside the U.S. Treasury itself. This is not a series of unrelated events. This is coordinated, multi-theater, multi-domain operations running simultaneously across 3 continents. Military, financial, political, criminal, all at once. There is no precedent for this scale of simultaneous disruption in modern history, and none of it is random. The planning behind this goes back years. Specific meetings, specific executive orders, specific military directives, all documented. But that's for tomorrow night. That's the final piece. Stay with me, this connects. Before Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion in October 2022, none of the information in this article series would have survived on social media. Not the bank fines, not the sanctions networks, not the cartel connections, not the currency analysis. The Twitter files proved it. 19 installments of internal documents showing a government-operated censorship machine. The FBI maintained a dedicated channel with Twitter, sent lists of accounts to suppress, paid Twitter $3.4 million for staff time processing government requests. The Stanford Virality Project explicitly recommended suppressing stories of true vaccine side effects and true posts which could fuel hesitancy. True posts that were true. They suppressed them anyway. The Hunter Biden laptop story was blocked before the 2020 election. FBI agents who warned social media companies about it knew the laptop was not Russian disinformation. They told the platforms to be skeptical anyway. Musk fired the people running it on day 1, released the internal documents, open-sourced the algorithm, replaced partisan fact-checkers with community notes, a system so effective that Meta copied it. And now Grok sits inside every X post, an AI that will fact-check anything in real time. Go ahead, ask it. We are the media now. Without that $44 billion purchase, every narrative challenging institutional consensus, financial reset, currency revaluation, geopolitical realignment, gets suppressed as misinformation by the same government NGO platform pipeline that killed the laptop story and silenced Harvard epidemiologists. The censorship was real, it was coordinated, it targeted true information, and it would still be operating today if one man hadn't bought the platform. So, the protection networks are crumbling. The censorship infrastructure is gone. The cartels, the bank laundering, the political gatekeepers, all being dismantled in sequence, across every continent, at a speed and scale that tells you this was planned long before any of it made the news. Tomorrow night is the final piece. How far back the planning really goes. The meetings that happened years before the world caught up. What happened at the White House on July 22, 2025, that nobody is talking about. Who actually holds the keys to the redemption process, and why it isn't the CBI. And the honest answer to what comes next. If you've made it this far, you already see the pattern. Tomorrow I'll show you where it leads. Part 3 drops tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Same place. Don't miss it.